Hey everybody, he's Tony George. I'm Scott Spreitzer. It is DocSports.com's 10 in 10. You give us about 10 minutes, we're going to give you 10 games. 5 in college this week, 5 from the NFL, little Colts Chiefs talk, and a whole lot more. First, a quick note though, if you have yet to become a member over at DocSports.com, it's a real cool way to give it a trial run. You click on the link below this video, you get yourself set up for a free $60. Free, yet it comes with the DocSports.com guarantee. Check it out, click on the link below the video, or go over to the homepage, DocSports.com. Let's get to it, Mr. George. We got Cal at Oregon. We're going to kick things off in the Pac-12, where the Ducks open as low as 14 at Circa, now 18 in this game. And I got to tell you right now, the backup for the California Golden Bears, kid by the name of Monster, is a UCLA transfer. And he's going to be likely quarterbacking this team for most of the rest of the season, if not all of it. He came in against ASU, Arizona State, last week. Things did not go so well, Tony. I like this Cal defense, no doubt about it. The offense was already mediocre. Might be a little bit worse now going up to Eugene.
Does it concern you at all that they struggled to put up 20? Oregon did 21 against Stanford. That's the one thing in this game that concerns me a little bit. And you're playing a defense that's having 18 points per game allowed in Cal. Because that is the strength of the Cal team, is their defense. Monster did not look very good in that debut. Scott. I agree. And in this league, you need a quarterback to win. Oh, by the way, we got a first-round draft pick playing quarterback for the Ducks. I could only lay. I really couldn't take. But, boy, that defense gives me a lot of pause. The line move's very concerning in this one. But let's switch gears to a game where probably, well, I'm just going to say what I always say. Iowa taking on Michigan. Michigan laying 4.5, total 48. I sound like a broken record, Mr. Spreitzer. What has Jim Harbaugh done since he's been in Michigan, besides lose every big game that he's in? And I think this is a good number here. You got the better coach. You got the better quarterback in Stanley. He looked real good. Iowa defense, number 3 in the country in scoring D here. Boy, those points look awfully tasty to me, Scott.
Here's something to note. The college football game of the year lines at the Golden Nugget that came out at the end of May, beginning of June, Michigan was a 12-point favorite. They even went down more today, right before we started shooting videos, Tony, down to 3.5 in some books, Michigan. You're talking about 8.5 points worth of value, if you consider it value. But here's the thing. We've seen those game of the year lines that have been bet opposite from where they were in a significant manner. The bettors have been winning, and we saw Wisconsin do that against Michigan. Wisconsin was a dog on the game of the year lines, went off as a favorite against Michigan, kicked them sideways, and then last week you had Ohio State -10 game of the year lines. They went off 17, and they blasted our Cornhuskers.
Oh, did Ohio State win last week?
Yeah, just by a couple of points. It was close, last second field goal. Unfortunately, the field goals were worth 41 points. But in this particular game, it's down to 3.5. Everybody's off of Michigan. Hey, you know, Harbaugh has had success, especially at the NFL level. But we'll see if Iowa can keep this close with another stout effort from their defense. Here we go, Auburn, Florida. Tigers were a pick when the slide opened on Sunday. They are now a 3-point favorite. By the way, got to mention the game of the year line again. The Florida Gators were a 7-point favorite way back on June 1st when the Golden Nugget pushed out these game of the year lines. Here's the thing, Tony, and I'm going to let you take it over because I know it is your free play. Felipe Franks obviously got knocked out a couple of weeks ago, out for the season. I like this kid Trask, Kyle Trask. He's a 77% passer thus far, but he's yet to face the likes of this Auburn Tiger defense.
Yeah, Florida's got L.S.U. on deck, and boy, what Auburn, I tell you what I've been most impressed with is Malzahn calling plays. They really have flourished with this young kid Nixon. Now, we all know about his dad, the 92 undefeated team.
Talk about feeling old. I remember him.
Yeah, I think I placed a few wagers on him. I'm going to place a wager on his son here on Saturday. I like Auburn in this spot. I think the number's short at 3. The one thing I'm most impressed with is Auburn's defense. I think they really fly to the ball well. They're very good up front. I like their overall game plan here. Florida, I just am not sold on, especially against a defense only allowing 95 yards on the ground and 17 points per game. That's it. My SEC free play, the Auburn Tigers, on the -3 on the road. And we're going to switch gears, go back to the Big Ten, Ohio State, Scott and I. Tough. A few texts back and forth. We can't repeat them on the air. This is a family show, but went into Lincoln. It has absolutely destroyed Nebraska, Scott, last week. this is a game here where you're matching up two very good defenses.
Sure.
Really, I think that Ohio State defense last week, they've got a couple of first-round draft picks on there. Young is absolutely unbelievable off the edge. And I think Michigan State's really going to struggle to score here, Scott. I know their quarterback, I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget, 10-to-1 TD interception ratio, but he hasn't played the likes of a defense like Ohio State, Scott.
This one's been bumped up, open 17 at Circa on Sunday, all the way up to 20. Saw some 20 and a halves out there, so it's getting up there. But listen, neither one of us had Nebraska last week, and that could have been a 70-7 final score. This Ohio State team, listen, the reason we talk about them almost every week on 10 and 10, two reasons, because they might be your national championship team at the end of the season, and another reason, they play a few more opponents, a little bit better opposition than that team we always talk about in the SEC, who skates through Morgan State and Howard and all those teams for the first half of the season. You know who I'm talking about.
Well, we have no bias.
Not at all.
Oh, we're Big Ten boys.
Utah State at L.S.U. I threw this one in there, Tony. L.S.U. laying 28. Here's why I threw it in there, because we haven't talked about L.S.U. that much this year. I don't think yet on the 10 and 10s. And one thing we know about Eddie O and that gang down at L.S.U., they didn't rest on their laurels. They upgraded this offense. This is a better offense than he's ever had at L.S.U. in his couple of years there. And as far as Utah State, they got a kid by the name of Jordan Love. If you haven't paid attention to him, he's back again this season, quarterback for the Aggies. He can get it done. He's got receivers who can get it done, and they will test that Tiger secondary. Are they going to be able to stop LSU's offense? Heck no, never. They won't do it. But the bottom line is that LSU might have spent a little bit more of their off week last week preparing for what's coming up next, and that is an SEC foe by the name of the Florida Gators. So listen, I think the over, which is 72.5, isn't a bad way to go in this game. I think you'll see both teams. I think all we need is about 24 out of Utah State, and it gets there, Tony.
Well, they're averaging 38 a game.
Yep.
And the last two games, LSU 66-65. Love is the real deal, 65%, 1,207 yards passing. And the nice thing about the Utah State offense, bear in mind, they lost only to Wake Forest, who, by the way, is undefeated.
Yep.
3-point ball game, which I pushed on, by the way, to open up the season. That was one of the season openers. Nonetheless, they got a couple running backs, Warren and Bright, almost 700 yards combined. They balance their attack well. I think they'll score enough to keep LSU at least, interested in paying attention to what's going on. I think you're right. If you're leaning over 72, I'm going to have to join you.
I'm going to make that my 10 and 10 best bet this week is going to be the over between Utah State and LSU. And you can find it around 72, 72 and a half. If it's up to 73, that's fine. You just don't want to go too far above that. But again, our 10 and 10 free play over Utah State LSU.
Switch gears to the NFL and, of course, the Ravens last week. Wow. The only game I had 3 side plays in the NFL on Sunday, and this is the only one that I won. I took the Browns, and what's disarming about this here is the Ravens travel to the Steelers. Steelers at home catching 3.5 on a big Monday night win, 27-3 domination over the Cincinnati Bengals. I really don't know if that's a bright spot or not, Scott, because the Bungles aren't looking good this year. But what's most alarming to me in this game here is the fact the Ravens are going on the road, and in back-to-back weeks they've given up 500 yards in each of those games, Scott.
Well, that's the thing is you got to figure out also when it comes to the Ravens if they're going to be able to free up Hollywood Brown. Because the last 2 opponents have figured it out with Lamar Jackson. He has made improvements, but nothing like they were talking about after his first 2 games of the season. The last 2 teams Baltimore's faced, they took away Hollywood Brown, the deep threat. Lamar Jackson looks like the Lamar Jackson almost of last year. He had 2 picks this past weekend. He went like 22 for 43 when KC took out Hollywood Brown 2 weeks ago. If Pittsburgh can take away his deep threat, he'll probably revert again back to last year's Lamar Jackson rather than the first 2 games this year. I am kind of filibustering right now because I'm not sure where I'm going with that game. It is 3.5. Total right around 44.
Well,
I will say this. Every game they play is close. 18 of the last 25, I think, were decided by 7 or less. So,
well, who are you going to trust, John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin?
It's tough, man.
Really?
It's tough.
No, it's not. No, I'm not on the Mike Tomlin bandwagon.
Okay.
I think Harbaugh bounces back this week after back-to-back losses. I really do. But the hook on that, may come into play. That might be one to sit back and watch.
I don't know who I trust between Mason Rudolph and Lamar Jackson. That's what kind of bothers me a little bit more. I got 2 quarterbacks I just cannot believe in.
All right. Well, let's switch
Jags
gears.
and Panthers?
Yeah,
right.
Jags and Panthers. And guess what? Are you a believer yet? Minshew Magic.
Yeah.
Did it again. Unbelievable game up in Denver. Of course, Denver, we can talk about them another time, but Elway hadn't had a whole lot of success as Peyton Manning if Peyton Manning was a quarterback up there as being a general manager. But this one here, I think it's. I think what most impressive is both these are backup quarterbacks and both have thrived extremely well. Kyle Allen's done a heck of a job with the Panthers. Went on the road, got the job done last week at home. This Panthers laying 3.5 here, Scott, total of 41. They got Fournette going last week, which was surprising.
That big 80-yarder to kick things off.
Yeah.
The second half, he was tremendous.
Oh,
like
I
$190
know.
in the second half.
Against the Denver defense. You think he's going to have that much success against the Panthers? I guess that's the question.
Here's the thing. With Kyle Allen, obviously now you got a Carolina team and offense that does have a deep threat, so defenses have to play an honest brand of football. Cam Newton was injured, whether it's his shoulder, his ankle, whatever it is. He was unable to even throw the ball more than 15, 20 yards downfield, so defenses were kind of coming up towards the line of scrimmage, cheating a little bit. Can't do that with Kyle Allen. The scary thing about Kyle Allen is he's got 5 fumbles in 2 games now. That's a little bit worrisome. Also, don't get too enthralled, don't get too excited about a team when they are coming home and are now laying points after winning 2 straight games outright as a road underdog. Those teams tend to get overvalued, so be a little careful. Maybe they'll get there, Carolina, but the bottom line is you got to be a little bit careful when they start laying more than a field goal.
You hit the nail on the head. Are we betting games or are we betting numbers?
Exactly.
You ever heard of the hook?
Not shopping
it
low
might
anymore.
come into play in this one, let me tell you. And, of course, underdogs, last week, 11-4 against the spread. So right now I'm looking to take a few dogs again this
Road teams have been
weekend.
tremendous all season, too.
Well, speaking of underdogs, how about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week? Catching 9.5 at one point in time during the week. Scott, if I'd have told you this last week, you'd have thought I was drinking before the show.
I always think that.
Well,
it has nothing to do with your performance. Your performance is outstanding.
well, far be it for me to doubt your integrity. but nonetheless, if I'd have told you Tampa Bay is going to put up 55 points on LA's defense in LA, you told me, Tony, you have been drinking. Go take a nap. But nonetheless, here, that's what we got here. Bucks going to the Saints. Saints laying 3 off a big win. A very interesting defensive battle against the Cowboys, I guess, last week, which we had the under in that on the lean on the 10-10 last week. I kind of threw out Dallas. I got assassinated for that by a bunch of Saints fans in the comments. You can leave me your comments, too, right here on this. But nonetheless, the interesting thing about this series is these teams have split last 8 games, split 4-4. Sure. Don't forget last year, Tampa Bay went in here and waxed New Orleans in their home opener, 48-40. And so this here, maybe a little bit of overreaction what the Bucs did last week. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah. I mean, fortunately, had the Saints last week as the top play of the week for me in the NFL. So we cashed that. But again, that's another one, Tony. If you would have said, hey, you're going to get 4 field goals, do you still want to take the Saints in almost a pick 'em game? They were getting 2.5. And I would have said probably not. But the defense was outstanding. We thought they'd be good in that game, but they were beyond good. They were outstanding against Dak and the boys from Dallas. Listen, when it comes to Tampa Bay, I'm going to just talk real quickly about what's going on with the Rams. Jared Goff has all of a sudden come up against defenses and alignments that he's not being able to handle. New England laid the blueprint. I'll get into more of this on maybe an individual video because we want to keep these close to 10 minutes at least. But what New England did was bring up 6 men up front. They brought him close to the line. They took away play action. They took away what the Rams want to do with Goff as quarterback. He's not a drop-back quarterback, and that's what they turned him into. So if you go back to that game, 4 games this year, plus the Super Bowl, Jared Goff has 6 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions.
Yeah.
And he looked rough again last week against Tampa Bay. I know he completed a whole lot of passes, but does this team really want to throw 65, 70 passes a game? I don't think so. So they take away Gurley by bringing pressure. It keeps him in for a count or two to help block with anybody who's coming in, any extra pass rushers, and it takes him out of that immediate mix and that safety valve dump-off that Goff had last year. We'll see if they fix that. McVay's a pretty smart cookie. As far as this is concerned, can New Orleans keep Shaq Barrett away from Teddy Bridgewater? Shaq Barrett might be my favorite defender this year. 9 sacks already on the season. I don't know that you can trust New Orleans laying again more than a field goal when they've had to kick 4 field goals last week. Teddy Bridgewater's a game manager. He's not showing that he can blow teams out with his arm. That's tough, man. In Tampa Bay, they've got some decent coaching this year with Mr. Arians. They might be prepared to go in there and shock the Saints. We'll see. It's not a play yet. I'll let you know if it is later in the week.
You hit the nail on the head. Last week, Sean Payton outcoached Jason Garrett, as we kind of talked about him, right? I don't think he's going to outcoach Bruce Arians. You saw what he did against McVay last week, who's a good football coach, I might add.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Speaking of the Cowboys, they're at home taking on the Packers. I believe the line's 3.5, total 46.5. And I got to tell you something. This is a stay-away game for me.
Okay.
I don't see any value in this game. I don't know what to think about Green Bay. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers put up 422 yards against Philadelphia. A lot of that, and Philadelphia answered the bell at every call. The vaunted Packer defense that we heard so much about going into that game looked bad.
Yeah,
I mean, against an offense that had been struggling to that point.
Going into that game, it was like a couple of days before that, I tweeted out the Packers' run defense. It's not good. I'll give you the numbers in just a second. Their first game against Chicago, it's kind of a wash because Chicago did absolutely nothing creative at all on offense, and Trubisky did not play well. The next two games, they just got gashed big time on the ground. And I know a lot of Green Bay fans, and I love them, man. They're some of the best fans in the country, but a lot of them were saying, oh, they'll be just fine, they'll be just fine. Well, guess what? After Philly ripped them apart on the ground, Green Bay, that defense, the last 3 games, has allowed 523 yards rushing on 5.3 yards per carry. And now you're going to face a team with Zeke Elliott and a good backup in Pollard, and then Dak can work his magic. I haven't jumped in yet because of the number. We always bet points and not teams. But it'll be Dallas or nothing for me this week is what I'll put it. I'll put it that way, Dallas or nothing.
Yeah, I don't know what, we just found out one thing, that the Saints were not the Redskins, they weren't the Giants, they weren't the Dolphins, and they played a real team last week, and they got their rear end handed to them. Tight ball game, but, boy, New Orleans had their way with them, shoving them around. Be interesting to see how great both these teams react off a loss. I think there's too many intangibles there for me to make a move on it. And we're going to get to this game here. All we're going to do,
since it's a marquee
matchup. We're going to talk about the Colts and the Chiefs. Be sure and tune into the marquee matchup here. The line is the line is 10.5 and 57. But instead of giving you our opinion, I'm going to ask Mr. Spritzer a question.
Sure.
Did or did not Matt Stafford outplay Patrick Mahomes last week in that football game?
Pretty much, and he was doing it injured. He had a really good game. Listen, they had the 2 turnovers inside the 10-yard line. They came up empty twice inside the 10. If they don't come up empty, if they punch one of those into the end zone, kick a couple field goals, might have had a different team land into the win column. Still don't know about that fumble at the goal line. And by the way, Galladay for Detroit, he just kind of goes, at the guy who runs it back 100 yards. Quit playing. The refs are starting to let these plays play out rather than blow their whistles. Go up and nail the guy, smack his ass, put him on the ground, take him down, don't let him go 100 yards. Galladay had a clear shot to take him down and just kind of looked at him and did an Olay, and they never blew the whistles. 100 yards later, it's a defensive touchdown for KC.
Play ball till the whistle blows. The reason this is a marquee matchup, there's some key stats in this game Scott and I want to bring to you. Thanks for tuning in to the 10 and 10. Click that link in the description below. Get over there. Get yourself hooked up in the NFL this weekend at DocSports.com.